G. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about a paper called Emphasis, which is featured in Third Thoughts. And this paper is going to be dealing with, when I was, for many years, I'd hear people talk about emphasis and, the problem of someone in a conversation, say, emphasizing God's grace over God's justice. This was very common in more theological circles, or the idea of emphasizing the successes of capitalism over its failures, or its failures over successes, and stuff like that. And, I would see a whole lot of debates or conversations basically come to a screeching halt because of concerns about emphasis, and misplaced emphasis, and overemphasizing that or underemphasizing that. To the point where it's just like, I don't really want much to do with emphasis. And I do think, to this day, that emphasis is very, very problematic. But at the same time, to clarify, because you can always accuse someone of not emphasizing this or that properly, because language does not allow you to talk about everything at the same time. It's like in thoughts where we talk about dialectics, and language makes it basically impossible to speak dialectically. And yet, if the truth is dialectical, that means you really can't speak it, or even talk in a manner that is rightly suggesting or pointing to dialectical thinking. And that becomes a major problem. But it's just the nature of language. It's just the nature of speaking. I can only talk about one topic at a time. I can't talk about everything at the same time. So, it's just not possible to equally emphasize everything. Therefore, you can always critique someone as emphasizing this or emphasizing that. If I talk first about the problems of communism, then the positives, you could say, well, I'm biased against it. Or, you could just turn around and say, well, you're just following the script, where you say nice things before saying bad things, or say some bad things before saying nice things to come off as balanced and a critical thinker. So the very structure of speaking and thinking itself tends to necessarily be sequential, and therefore open itself up to critiques of emphasis, or not emphasizing this or that properly. However, over the years, I've come to accept that there's a place for discussing emphasis because, reality very rarely consists of equal causes, and people are different, and difference is real. There are people of whom, say, anger is more of a problem than not, right? And their motivations could, it's not that it's going to be like 50% personal, 50% environmental, 50% choice, or so on and so forth, right? It's probably, 80% choice, 10% environment, 10% personality, or something, some sort of unequal distribution of causes, right? Well, that being the case, it would kind of be a lie to talk evenly between the causes. It would actually be kind of false. It would suggest a equivalence of reasons for something occurring that actually isn't the case. Rarely are causes for something completely even. So there's a place for emphasis. And also, as you go through time, the mistakes the society are making could shift. At one time, perhaps we're over the top in technological essence, or technology leading to pathologies, and perhaps there's a time when we overemphasize rationality, but then you can have a time where you overemphasize non-rationality that leads to psychosis and magical thinking, and that's a problem. There's the problems a society faces are not necessarily even, right? There are different historical periods which call for different emphasis. And in a period where the main problem was, say, too much, a lack of rationality, not enough rationality, then to talk in a manner that evenly discussed the benefits in rationality and non-rationality could be problematic. Now, of course, this would require a person to be able to accurately discern the condition of the world, quote unquote, what it needs. Which is dangerous to assume one can judge that. But the point is that different historical times and moments could call forth different emphasis that would actually, a failure to emphasize under that circumstance would be deeply problematic. But again, so many conversations, so many discussions can just be destroyed or bogged down by concern of emphasis. And the paper is going to suggest that maybe there's a difference between an ideological emphasis and a distributed emphasis. Maybe there's a difference between, being able to tell the difference between emphasis used in service of ideology and winning in competition dynamics and conversation versus emphasis that's used to actually get at the historic moment is a very big difference. So you could say that there's a difference between emphasis based on ideology and emphasis based on history or concrete particularity and suchness, so there are big differences there. Not that it's easy to tell this difference, but at least identifying it could be useful. The paper also just quickly pointing to Hegel and saying that if reality is dialectical, if reality passes over into otherness, another reason why we can't just do away with emphasis entirely, given the risks, which would seem wise given the risks, but we can't do it, is because reality, Hegel's right, in my view, things pass over into otherness. And so basically what that means is everything contains latency and otherness in it. And that being the case, we're actually, every time we make anything intelligible, we are in a way engaging in emphasis. We are emphasizing something. So if, for example, freedom entails the conditions of possibility of passing over into slavery, if justice passing over to grace and vice versa, then the moment I actually talk about freedom, I'm actually emphasizing the freedom characteristic, if you will, of this, of something that is actually more like freedom / slavery, a kind of bothness, an AB, right? So actually, if reality is dialectical, I'm always emphasizing, and the reason why pointing out emphasis can be problematic is because you're acting like something that is always occurring is not always occurring, that you're acting like the regularity is special case. And that leads to confusions and pathologies and ultimately can lead to breakdown and self-effacement. So all thinking, in a way, is a certain emphasis in the moment I make it intelligible and move it into understanding. It is always a kind of emphasis of a dialectic that's actually AB. All thinking that I experience as AA necessarily is an emphasis of a characteristic over AB. So again, emphasis is unavoidable given how reality is. So we have to deal with it, but how do we deal with it well? And the hope of this paper is that by at least pointing to the problem of emphasis, that we might get better at it and not use it as simply a weapon in an ideological toolbox. But for more by OG Rose, please visit ogrose.com, Twitter, Anchor, Instagram, so on and so forth. And thank you so much for your time.